Yeah, that's right. I've talked about that.
Stay with their fingers.
Okay, there we go.
Oh, this is this one. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, I didn't know that. Hi. Well, thanks. And he won't take a picture of anybody. Call Lisa on the field. Call. I got a call.
Well, I didn't understand the first part of your question.
Nick Neesmith said in a column this morning that your office was intervening too deeply into higher education issues that you guys should stay out of. What is your response to critics who say you're meddling too much?
Well, I don't think that's the case. I am very disappointed in Nick Neesmith. I do not have any rational explanation for the column that he wrote. He refers to two specific instances. The first was the selection of the chancellor of the university system, something that does not come along every year or two. It is a rare occasion that occurs, and that happened early on in my administration. Now, I quite frankly felt that the selection of Hank Huckabee was a great choice. I felt he possessed the kind of qualities of knowledge of the state of Georgia, having served in various capacities in other administrations, having been an elected House member, and being involved in higher education in various capacities. I made my sentiments known. However, the Board of Regents asked that I interview the two finalists and express my opinion back to them. I did that. I interviewed the two finalists, and I expressed my opinion that I thought Hank Huckabee was the right man for that job. Now, Nick Neesmith was the chairman of the Board of Regents. If he didn't want my opinion, he shouldn't have asked for it. And if he did not like the recommendation that I made, the Board of Regents should not have approved it. Second, another situation came along, and that was later, and that was the selection of the new president of the University of Georgia. Once again, the Board of Regents asked me if I would interview the two finalists. I did. I thought it was very clear that Jerry Moorhead was the preferred individual. His long-standing association with the University of Georgia, his recognition of excellence at the University of Georgia as an instructor and as a mentor was exceptional. I told them that I thought of the two that they asked me to interview, that Jerry Moorhead was, I thought, the better candidate. Once again, they did accept that recommendation, and Jerry Moorhead was appointed. Here again, if the Board of Regents did not want my opinion, they shouldn't have asked me for it. And if Mr. Neesmith is disappointed in the selection of Hank Huckabee or Jerry Moorhead, he should be man enough to say that that's his problem. I think he knows that the Board of Regents has received great acclaim for the selection of both of those individuals. And I dare say, at this point in time, he does not want to put himself on that side of the ledger. Yes, ma'am.
I was going to say, I'm glad Justine went first. Governor, you're poised to name 3 new Court of Appeals judges, and that'll give you the opportunity to leave a significant and lasting impression on the appellate bench. What kind of folks are you looking for those judges? What impression do you hope to leave? How would you like to mold the court?
Well, I think the best thing any governor or anyone who has powers of appointment can do is to try to select the best qualified and the best individual for any position that they're appointed to. I think that's especially important in positions like appellate judges. Even though they are technically elected by the people of this state, as most of you know, it is a rare occasion when a sitting judge is defeated at the ballot box. So I think a governor has a special responsibility to make good choices and good judgment calls. I am pleased with the individuals that I have had the opportunity to appoint, one to the Supreme Court of Georgia and others to the Court of Appeals. I think these individuals are the kind of people that I think will serve our state well, not only in the short term, but in the long term. And in most instances, judges on our appellate courts do serve for a very long period of time.
Governor, what do you think of the new ethics executive director for the State Ethics Commission? And also, during the campaign, during your re-election campaign, you made ethics reform a big priority. You talked about overhauling the commission. This past legislative session went by. We saw a little bit of an increase in the funding, but no overhaul. Can you address some of those critics that say that more needs to be done to make the State Ethics Commission independent and more functional than it's been in the past?
Well, first of all, my budget doubled the revenue flowing to the Ethics Commission. I think that was a significant manifestation of my support for the efforts of that agency. The final version did not include quite that much in the final bill, but my budget recommendation did. Now, I do not know personally the new individual who's been appointed as the director of that body. I do know him by reputation. He's been a long-serving member of the state government and serving in various capacities, representing various agencies in his capacity as an attorney for the Secretary of State's office, as I recall. He appears to be qualified, and I certainly wish him the very best. With regard to further structural reform, that is, to expand the membership of the commission itself, I received requests from the existing members of that commission saying, please do not do that now. We are trying to sort through and put in place competent staff, and we do not necessarily need additional members. We needed staff, and as you know, that's what the money was primarily used for. I felt like, in good conscience, that they were showing significant progress in dealing with the backlog of cases which had been there for far too long. I felt like it was the only responsible thing to do was to give them appropriate time to see if, with new personnel and with additional inflow of money, which will allow them to upgrade their information technology system, which much of the money will be used for that. We'd already put money in for that in previous budgets. I felt like they needed an opportunity in a sufficient period of time to see if they could deal with the issues. It's primarily the issues of timely adjudication of claims that have been submitted or complaints that have been filed with the Commission. Now, if there's a problem that persists, and if members of the General Assembly believe for next year that the makeup of that commission needs to be expanded, it will certainly be a topic that I will be agreeable to entertain discussions about. But these are people who serve in a very difficult role at no pay. In fact, if you had to ask for volunteers, you'd probably have a very difficult time finding people who wish to volunteer for that kind of service. So I felt like in respect to their service, they needed an opportunity to see with the new staffing and the new funding what the results would be.
Governor Deal, can you talk a little bit about your appointment of Larry O'Neill to the tax tribunal judgeship, given that he doesn't appear to have been on the short list from the Judicial Nominating Commission?
Well, when I understood that he was interested in that position, I asked the Judicial Nominating Commission if they would interview him, and the co-chairs of that commission did do so and gave him a recommendation of approval. I think if anybody who knows Larry O'Neill knows that as an attorney, he is a tax specialist, therefore has the legal background and expertise to deal in this area that is a somewhat unique area. He certainly understands state government, having served in many capacities, including the leadership in the House of Representatives. So I think he's a very qualified individual.
Medicaid services have asked the state to return what amounts to more than $200 million in nursing home payments. And just wondering how big of a concern is this to you?
Well, obviously, anytime that you're talking about those kind of dollars, that has to be of a concern. But as you know, these kinds of requests and complaints take many years sometimes to sort out and determine whether or not money was inappropriately paid, and if so, the exact amount. We're early in that process.
Regarding your criminal justice reform work, very exciting work, can you tell us what your next steps are? We're talking about judges. Are you considering mandatory minimum discussions, or what are your next 3 years looking like in criminal justice reform?
Well, thank you. That's a good question. As you may know, the last reforms that we made in criminal justice did give some greater discretion to judges in certain cases, to allow them to not be totally bound by mandatory minimum sentences. I know this is an ongoing discussion item with the Criminal Justice Reform Council, and it may be that they will recommend that we take further action. Here again, sometimes legislative changes deserve a little bit of time to figure out what effect they've actually had in the real world. So it may not be an agenda item this next session. I do think that our criminal justice reforms are historic. I do think that they're producing excellent results, and we are pushing forward on every front. And I thank those of you in this audience who have been supportive of those endeavors. I thank those of you in particular who have expressed an interest in trying to provide assistance to those who are leaving our prison system, because housing and jobs are two of the greatest challenges. And one of the great things that we have going on is that we now have a nationally recognized reentry program. So I am very pleased with it. Is it easy work? Absolutely not. It takes a lot of dedication on the part of a lot of people to make it work, but the results seem to be very positive. Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Have all the issues regarding the availability and reliability of the Georgia execution drug been resolved to your satisfaction?
I haven't gotten a report lately, so I'm really not in a position to comment about the current status of it. It is obviously one of those areas of concern, and as you know, we have a new commissioner of the Department of Corrections, and he's made it that a top priority to make sure that we straighten that issue out. And I have not received a recent report on that, but I feel sure that we're making progress on it.
Government watchdogs have raised their eyebrows to your suggestions of tightening up the state whistleblower law and making it tougher for people to cite that. Why do you want to do that? Why the need for that? And do you feel that it's going to be a priority, this next legislative session? Is this going to be something that you want to be leading efforts to for next year?
Well, that is a subject that I hope I will have the opportunity to discuss with the leadership in the House and the Senate about. I don't think any of us want to see a creation of a category of individuals in a right-to-work state where if they work for the government, they can make sure they can't get fired. And we have now created a specialty, it appears, within the bar of the state of Georgia of those who know how to manipulate and make sure that somebody who perhaps maybe deserves to be terminated from their employment can create a file and a log so that they become eligible to be classified as a whistleblower. My opinion is that the opinion of the Supreme Court, which broadened the coverage for whistleblower, was not in keeping with the original legislative intent when that statute was passed. That's my opinion. And you may have others who have different opinions, but it is certainly a topic I think is timely and is worth looking at.
Governor, the water wars that we haven't been talking about so much anymore because of all the rain we've been experiencing when we look at California and look down the road. I understand there may be some reason for optimism in your discussions with the governors of Alabama and Florida that are not happening in the courts about that subject.
Well, as you may know, we are under a gag order from the special master that was appointed by the Supreme Court as a special master in the lawsuit that Florida filed against us in the Supreme Court of the United States. So that puts a cap on my ability to discuss that.
But you're smiling. So.
I'm sorry?
But you're smiling. I'm
smiling. It's raining outside. I'm smiling. Yes, sir.
With your focus on education, what is the appropriate role of the Georgia Department of Education going forward?
Well, I think their role is what the Constitution outlines. They are to be the director and the working in cooperation with the State Board of Education to be able to set policies and practices for the public schools of our state. I must say that I am very pleased with the new school superintendent. I found him to be a very agreeable individual. I am pleased that he is involving himself personally and his staff in the ongoing discussions of a special reform commission that is working now, looking at modification and updating of our state funding formula, the old QBE formula. And I think that's an encouraging sign. I think there is no reason in the world that we cannot all work together. Our goals ought to be the same, and that is to improve the quality of education so that we improve the lives of our children and the future of our state.
Protesting the raccoon trapping bill, and I know one of my hometown is the one who sponsored that bill. Wondering your thoughts on they're asking obviously for you to veto it. I'm just wondering your thoughts on.
A little late. I signed it a while ago.
No, talk about the need. Talk about the need to have that.
Well, you know, it was not one of my legislative items, but I had bigger animals to trap. What the legislation does is create a uniform status for trapping across the state. We had a different situation that prevailed in Middle and South Georgia from that which prevailed in North Georgia. Yes, ma'am.
Those of us who are watching the Georgia Dome situation are wondering, what is the cost analysis that justifies tearing down the Georgia Dome? Because we understand that the Falcon Stadium will allow the proceeds from those events to go to the Falcons institutions, not the state. But the Georgia Dome has been tremendously profitable to sell out crowds and fabulous. What about have we done a cost analysis on keeping the Dome in addition to the Falcon Stadium? And how much the possibility of that private venture hotel will be? Because to many people it looks like hundreds of millions of dollars of state assets are going down the drain if we tear down the Georgia Dome.
Well, first of all, I know that a very detailed cost analysis was made. I do not have those facts and figures in my head at this point in time. That was one of the considerations is, are you better off with a new stadium? And the conclusion was that yes, you will be. And one of the reasons is that you're now going to see a professional soccer team included in the use of that facility, whereas that was not the case with the old dome. The money that was put there was primarily authorization that the state gave to the city of Atlanta to use their hotel motel tax up to the $200 million mark, as I recall. So other than the building of the parking deck, which will be an added benefit to the state for the World Congress Center and for the events that will be hosted there in the dome, for which we will get the revenue, we thought that was a worthwhile investment. Yes, sir.
So, Governor Deal, thank you for addressing some of the ethics. And as one of the government watchdog groups that was mentioned, I just wanted to follow up because I have and we have praised your budget for increasing the funding of the Ethics Commission. That's one of the things that we've called for. But at the same time, I kind of feel like I'm thanking the guy for bringing a water bucket to my house fire, because there's so much more that needs to be done, and you control the water flow. There was a detailed analysis of our state ethics laws, which was a 350-question examination that ranks us 50th in the nation.
That was by a very partisan individual, I might add.
Well, no, it was done by
He should be objective enough to question his credentials.
international organization that hired him, and fortunately, they're doing a follow-up.
Oh, good. Maybe they'll get somebody more qualified.
But let's specifically talk about one from the state audit department, which is under your administration, that recommended very sweeping changes, a lot of which are legislative, but there's also a lot of administrative fixes in there. Very little has been done, and you're the guy that can do it. So my question to you is, why leave us where we've got a commission that's in dire need of much more improvement than just the funding? Why not take those efforts that cost very little money and are easy fixes if applied, so that we can have a higher ranking on any report that's done by anyone?
Well, you know, you've got me confused. On the one hand, you and your organization complain about the fact that the governor and his office interferes with legislative action or with administrative action. The Ethics Commission is supposed to be independent. So when you say I control the flow of water, I don't really know, but you know, if you got a house fire, somebody bringing a bucket of water is a welcome sign, and hopefully we can do even more. I don't think we should spend money unless we know that we're getting the results we need from the money we're spending, and that was the response I gave to the previous question. We've just now seen who the new director is. Let's give the man time to unpack his boxes and get in his office and figure out who his staff is and find out where the bathroom is, and then we can start talking to him about things that he may recommend to the General Assembly and to the governor's office of changes that he needs. I think we owe him the courtesy of giving him that opportunity.
Okay, to follow up, it was a Fulton County jury that found that your staff interfered with investigations being conducted by that commission.
No,
so it's just not me confusing you.
That was absolutely false. You know that's false.
That's not false.
You know there was not a single bit of testimony along that line. I was not ever called as a witness. None of my staff was ever called as a witness. Now, I'm not going to get into all of those things of the past. I'm simply saying to you that was a dysfunctional ethics commission. When you have years passing by, when they failed to do anything other than concentrate on investigating me, and the conclusion is there was nothing done wrong, then it was a time for somebody to act. Now, there again, whistleblower statute gives you the opportunity to make your case in that regard. But there was no interference from my office, and if that were the case, you would have already seen something very significant happen. There would have been no further action without something being done if that were the case. You know that's the case. In fairness to the organization that you represent, you ought not to begin to continue to spread false information. I'm disappointed in you.
Thank you, Governor.
To spread out these costs over ratepayers, that's going to be appropriate, or do you feel like Southern Company / Georgia Power should be absorbing those extra costs, those cost overruns?
In keeping with my stated policy and my practice over the last, now getting close to 5 years, I do not interfere or try to tell other constitutional officers what they should or should not do. The people of this state elect the members of the Public Service Commission. The questions that you ask are more appropriately addressed to that body and not to the governor's office.
I think we've got time for one more.
Sure. One more. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Carly Scrim, an attorney here, and I do work around child welfare. I want to commend you for putting together the Child Welfare Reform Council. SB 38 incorporates several recommendations that they've made. Have you had a chance to look at the legislation and decide what you plan to do with it, and how do you hope that council will function in the future?
Yes, we work with the council in coming up with recommendations and with the members of the General Assembly in the crafting of that legislation. I think it is on our signing list, but I don't recall off the top of my head. It's next week, I'm told, that we intend to do that. And I think we are doing that one at the Capitol, is that right? Yes, okay. So thank you for your comment, and we appreciate that. We think that that will move us even further in the right direction on child welfare issue. Very difficult subject, as you know. Well, thank you all again. Appreciate